Hello, my name is Nishay Devino, and in a second, I'm going to be joined by Brian Pace and Brian Normand of Psymposia. We usually talk about politics and science and related topics on our podcast Plus Three, but we're venturing into slightly new territory here with a new format. So this is going to be a close reading analysis of some of the Fox News takes on the Democratic National Convention.
After 3 tries, more than 3 decades of attempting it, Joe Biden last night finally got his party's nomination. In the end, Biden won anyway. The last kid picked for kickball somehow wound up captain of the team. And yet still, even now, very few people take Joe Biden seriously. Why is that? Well, if you've seen Biden talk, you know why. He is fading.
So just before we get into the fading bit and like the old geezer thing, I just think it's kind of a low blow, like the kickball, like sort of goes with Trump's whole not liking losers, mentality of like, oh, nobody wanted him and he's the last desperate pick. Like it doesn't really, to me, have much to do with his qualifications in the moment, but it seems like, subtly he's trying to plug that there.
The thing that it reminds me of is just the whole, George H.W. Bush is a wimp. That's what they were throwing at him when he was running. Of course, he actually, won that race. But, the man was the former head of the CIA. And, Joe Biden, for better or for worse, ran the United States as vice president for 8 years. It's not like he's the last kid picked for anything.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense. Like he's actually done stuff before, but, it just seems kind of like a bullying move.
This was the previous strategy. The first strategy was to cast him as that he has dementia, that, he's Sleepy Joe, and though they move the target, they see what works, Yeah,
well, and we're about to get into the dementia aspect in a second. So let's actually take a look at that footage, and I'll stop it again.
That's not a partisan point. It's not intended to be cruel. It's true. 77-year-olds generally are not meant to lead large countries. 77 is not the prime of life. It is old age. Joe Biden has grown weak. That's why we don't take him seriously. But as it turns out, there's another way to look.
So, I think, it's worth pointing out that Trump and Biden have like an age difference of 3 years. And it wasn't that long ago that, the president of the United States was bragging about drinking a glass of water with one hand, and giving sort of an epic play-by-play of his ability to walk down a not that steep ramp. So it's just had to mention.
I do think that the president's age is. With that being said, I do think that the age is like super valid, though. At the same time,
it's not ideal to have like a really like old, like someone who's kind of should be retiring and kind of enjoying, rather than somebody who's like but that doesn't really relate to the Trump Biden distinction, because how old is Trump?
74.
Right. So the point that he's making, it's not like most people change like super dramatically between 74. I mean, you can, but it's not the point that he's making against Biden. I mean, Biden here seems just as validly said against Trump.
Sure, and all, common sense tells you that one of them is much healthier than the other, too.
Right.
So.
Right, because isn't Biden, like, out, like, bicycling, and there's been all kinds of footage of him, like, outdoorsing recently.
Totally.
At Joe Biden.
And then didn't one of you say, actually, that, like, it might signal that they're kind of casting the seeds for some future Republican ascendancy?
A few weeks ago, the Tucker Carlson, he had to, I believe he had to start denying that he had political aspirations or whatever. I think a lot of this is signaling probably to others, because I think right below the surface right now, the different factions, the Nikki Haley's, the Liz Cheney, everybody's positioning Kevin McCarthy is going to try to defend his turf, because they're coming after him if he loses. So I think he's signaling kind of, keeping options open there.
Yeah, too. For like a younger person down the road to take up that mantle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've also got the Lincoln Project and a lot of people trying to say that, when the time was, before any indictments or before Trump lost, that they had voiced their criticisms. So I would say that this probably falls into that camp.
Yeah.
Biden's decline. It's a perspective that hasn't occurred to most Republicans, but clearly it's at the center of the Democrats' election strategy. Yes, Joe Biden is slowing down. For 50 years, he couldn't stop talking. Now he has trouble starting sentences. He forgets words. He misnames states. Occasionally, he mistakes his sister for his wife. Every time he gets confused, Biden grins in that charming way old people do when they know they're losing it. So yes, Joe Biden has gotten a little daffy, but for that very reason, he's not going to hurt you. In a time of chaos and shouting, it might be comforting to be led by a man who talks about record players and wears slippers with the socks attached. That's the actual message, the subtext of the Biden campaign. No one in the Democratic Party will say it out loud. No one ever will. But Biden's handlers understand that his punchiness could be his biggest asset. Because Biden is so obviously ineffective, he's harmless.
So there's a few things there. I mean, the word handlers, implies that he is, it's really fascinating to see just the way, especially in a time in the world where having a humanities training myself, where humanities are so like poo-pooed, yet this is coming down to this battle of storytelling, of like who gets to craft the narrative over the events that is the most convincing to the most people. And here, like the version of the handlers of Biden is putting him out to be this like puppet or Trojan horse that is just kind of like played by nefarious actors behind the scenes rather than having his own kind of agency, so just that the word choice there, for instance.
Yeah, but I mean, I would also say that, probably every American president has had some version of, a staff around them that are fixers and damage control. And I mean, again, look at the current president and how frequently statements that he's made have had to have been dialed back or denied. And so, all of these executives have minions running around them. So it's sort of like it's a non-statement. Of course, the leader of the American empire has staff that do things.
Sure. And I also think that it's in Biden's best interest to probably be quiet, because the people who are voting for him, a very high percentage of those people are not necessarily voting for him. They're voting against Trump. And, so it's good for him to shut up. Nancy Pelosi just came out yesterday or the day before saying that, basically saying that, he shouldn't debate, because that's like the big vulnerability right now is the upcoming debates. That's the show. And so how is he gonna, how is strength gonna be projected against strength here? And so, Nancy Pelosi just came out and she said, no, he shouldn't debate. Trump doesn't deserve a debate with him, which obviously I think we know what she's saying. Biden pushed back against that yesterday.
The problem with that is you end up with that, we saw this with the IDW as well, the intellectual dark web, with this kind of like convenient pulling the bad faith card out and saying like, oh, I don't have to engage. I don't need to, they're using bad strategies and not trying to engage with good faith in an argument. And so it's not worth the energy. And I believe that there are cases where that's the case, where it's like you don't want to feed the trolls, right? But at the same time, it's dangerous to go down that road, because you end up in a situation where you can use it to block out conversations that you don't want to be like engaging with.
Yeah, and I would also say that, this is a time where I think that we might see the Democrats say, well, we've watched the Republicans dispense with any kind of institutional norms, whether it be, Mitch McConnell blocking Merrick Garland in an election year, or practically everything that Trump has done, including not revealing his tax returns. We may see the Democrats say, well, maybe we don't have the rules. He serves us. But yeah, exactly as what you're saying, in an electoral fight, not being able to risk your ideas and show that you can go up against even the most sort of belligerent opponent. I mean, these are people who are supposed to be interacting with, international, allies and enemies. And I guess one big responsibility of the president of the United States, I would say, would be to hopefully prevent nuclear war. So it doesn't mean you get to sit things out.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to, just before we move on, point out with this last clip was the way that, and this is common for folks like Tucker and Laura Ingraham, to say that, most Republicans, like establishment Republicans, don't know this or aren't acknowledging this, and then saying something to like bring the Fox viewership in as if they're like in this rebel kind of like, populist secret, society, which is like, again, Tucker has his own handlers. He has his own reason for doing that beyond just the kind of like, he's not, I think it was Vox did a really excellent kind of analysis of why does Tucker make himself out to be this like, normal everyday American when he comes from this like very elite aristocratic kind of background.
Tucker Carlson makes $27,400 per day.
Wow.
That's $10 million per year.
That's crazy.
And he has an audience eating from him.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be clear about what some of those handlers have been up to. I mean, very recently, back in July, Tucker Carlson's chief top writer resigned. Blake Neff was his name, for making racist and homophobic and sexist comments under a pseudonym online. This man wrote every other word Tucker Carlson said on the air. I think it speaks volumes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also a reason why Andrew Anglin said that he's basically their spokesperson, for the mainstream.
Neo-Nazi,
of the Daily Stormer.
Yeah, founder of Daily Stormer, Andrew Anglin.
Let's go further with this clip.
In that way, Biden is the mirror image of, say, Elizabeth Warren. Warren's eyes gleam with the menacing promise of Germanic efficiency.
I just think it's hilarious to use that statement with a picture of her in this, like,
she looks like a teacher. She looks like my principal.
Yeah, it's just like it seems like they could have found a picture of her with her eyes gleaming, but it just in this situation it seems kind of preposterous to pair.
This looks like when.
I was just gonna say that she was. If you look at this photo behind Elizabeth Warren to her left in blocks in this children's classroom, it spells out BLM. So invoking. Germanic efficiency is a little incongruous.
This looks like when you upload a video to Vimeo and it's just a random screenshot of the thumbnail. Like there was no effort to depict her as looking as some Germanic anything. It's a random screenshot.
Which is kind of strange because you'd think that, they paired Biden with that kind of goofy grin while they were talking about senility, and like later on they also choose some kind of unflattering still frames of folks, and so you'd think that with all that attention to putting people in weird lights that they would have found a different picture here. I don't know.
Biden's eyes are like windows onto an empty sky. There's nothing there, just a placid void. Democrats see an advantage in this. A party that no longer represents the mainstream needs a leader who won't scare voters. Joe Biden's job is to soothe your fears about what the left will do if they ever take power. The most radical mass political movement in American history has found a front man who seems like he should be feeding pigeons. Democrats are happy about that. If you didn't see Biden speak last night, you may not fully appreciate this dynamic. Some Republicans in Washington will tell you that Biden's acceptance speech was scary. It's their job to say things like that. But in this case, that's not true. A future with hope and love for our fellow Americans. That's what Joe Biden promised last night. Is there anyone who doesn't want that? Well, the leaders of Joe Biden's party, for one thing. Democratic leaders are not calling for unity. They're demanding division. They staged an entire...
Okay, wait, stop there. I mean, what the hell? Like, the amount of time that not just like, Joe Biden, but Barack Obama like spent doing advanced yoga poses to try and reach across the aisle to Republicans. Like,
Yeah.
you pretend like the Democrats want division. I mean, the Democrats want a lot of things that are problematic that I'm happy to critique. And, I think that, ultimately I don't want anybody to misunderstand our commenting.
Oh yeah, no, we're not like
we're not
cheerleaders.
liberal.
Yeah.
But like it's bananas, to say that Democrats are the ones stoking division.
Well, and if you compare the rhetoric of the two different conventions, like the Republican convention was the one that was like, fire and brimstone and just like super angry, and like and so he's making the case here that all of the surface level, positivity is just to mask this underbelly of conniving, anarchy.
And his other point at the beginning, like, just to be clear, Joe Biden is not the choice of any progressive out there.
Right. It's like, I would be happy. I would be happy. Sorry to interrupt, but just to say, like, I would be happy if Biden was this like front person for this like ultra left,
Yeah. To be clear, Biden is there is because Bernie like lost.
Right.
That's why he's there.
Right.
Yeah.
He's far from the new thing that they're saying is that, because they've moved on from, that he's senile. So now that they have to say that, their new messaging is that Biden is a Trojan horse for the radical left agenda.
Right.
Now that's the new thing.
Yeah.
I mean, only.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
It's like it's like this like dark dystopian image that they're presenting would be like great in my opinion, but unfortunately that's not the case.
Since when did the senator who like whipped up all kinds of support for the Iraq war become like a cause of radical leftist politics?
Right. Or the guy
get it.
who authored the crack cocaine legislation and authored the Rave Act to stop, dance parties from happening. Like, I think this is yet another like example of both actually like liberals and conservatives agreeing to pretend that leftists are something that they are not, and ultimately talking about like them as if they've never met anybody who actually holds left beliefs.
Right.
That amounted to an extended tribute to the zero-sum viciousness of identity politics. This group gets this,
Pause.
that group deserves.
Like, the biggest games of identity politics are being played on the right, which is, white identity politics,
And grievance,
religious identity politics. This is nonsense.
Yeah, and as we'll see later too, like it's such a classic naming, pointing fingers, describing something, like shadow projection of something that you actually are doing yourself but not admitting. This is like a recurring theme.
Give it to us now. A nation of 350 million people splintered into countless warring tribes, united by nothing apart from a common loathing of their own country. It was an orgy of anti-American grievance mongering.
Wait a minute. Worst orgy ever.
Yeah.
And from start to finish, it was relentlessly, savagely partisan. Watch the Reverend Freddie Haynes explain.
See, this is pause. They put time and energy into the screenshot.
That's right. Yeah, I know. It's like it makes him like, yeah, like they specifically chose a kind of unflattering position for him. So, and then usually they do that, and so that's why it's like the what was her name? Elizabeth Warren thing stood out as like an exception to that rule.
Jesus hates Republicans too.
You have the nerve to build a wall while at the same time you have in the harbor there in New York, the Statue of Liberty saying, give me your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Jesus will say, America, if you don't get your act together, you may well go to hell.
America is headed to hell, says the Reverend Freddie.
Were you going to say something there?
Yeah, what was the Cuccinelli? Is that his name? Is he? What is he? The Border Patrol ICE guy? One of those departments. He's the one that took the Statue of Liberty line and like added, "As long as you don't cost us any money," or
Oh,
something,
yeah.
something like that. You remember that going on?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, this whole fire and brimstone
No,
thing.
but let me play the full interpretation, because what the Reverend actually said was kind of like you may well, this is not necessarily the gist of what he was saying was like it's hypocritical. It's not like following through on the values you supposedly adhere to. But then listen to how Tucker morphs it.
Just real quick, because
Yeah.
I think maybe we have the screenshot of Tucker that we should use if we were.
No, this one's depicting. It's too much. You need to have the puppy dog.
Right.
Like this isn't quite full puppy dog.
Yeah.
Use puppy dog.
But listen to how Tucker riffs on the statement that was just made.
Damned for eternity. Flames, smoke, pitchforks, gnashing of teeth, the whole thing. Watch Harris diagnose America.
It's just, he's saying that the Reverend was saying this is necessarily going to happen, and really amping up the hell aspect of it just to make it into something it's not. That wasn't what he was saying.
Right. And I mean, I think that if we really dig into it a little bit, for how long? I mean, just go to any protest or really any like farmers market of any note, and you'll see some, extreme radical right, evangelical standing there saying, America is going to hell because of the lesbians and the
Right.
homos and the satanic witches. And it's like, to find a Democrat using similar rhetoric, keep looking.
Right.
I mean, there's a reason why Trump's inauguration is referred to as like the American Carnage speech. That was
right.
that was what set the tone.
Yeah.
I mean, the tone was already set, but it's ridiculous.
And Tucker's about to, just in a second, also warp another quote from Kamala Harris. So focus on how she says it, and then we can discuss his takeaway.
America with a fatal case of racism.
There is no vaccine for racism. We've got to do the work. We've got to do the work to fulfill that promise of equal justice under law. Because here's the thing, none of us are free until all of us are free.
There's no vaccine, explains Dr. Harris. Looks like the patient won't make it. Sorry. America is dying from the virus of racism, and there's nothing we can do. We've reached the limits of modern medicine. We're going to have to let this country go and start over. Kamala Harris was hardly the only one to say that.
It's so cynical to take a statement that is clearly intended to mean we can't just sit back and expect business as usual to end this thing. We have to actually take initiative and make an effort. Like, that was the point. And somehow, I mean, he has to know better to warp that into there's no vaccine, aka it's a fatal outcome that we have to just like throw away and create something new.
It fits into the sort of general narrative that Tucker and his base are talking about. Like, the idea is that if you don't have a vaccine, you should you shouldn't do anything, but I mean, we are in a pandemic right now, and we don't have a vaccine, and there's lots of things that we can, and probably more that we should be doing, but none of that enters into this worldview at all. So
that's the right's worldview. We don't do anything. Like,
but the right would say not only do we not do anything, but that we continue doing things, like business as usual. All I'm saying is that just because you don't have a vaccine doesn't mean you can't take action that is useful.
Yeah, or you just like accept that everyone needs to die. Like, it's crazy.
A false dichotomy.
Right.
Well, the White House last night, when they asked them about if people are being tested, I believe like one of the communications people's response was, well, everybody's going to get it anyways.
Kamala Harris was hardly the only one to say that. Speaker after speaker this week hit the same theme. America is beyond redemption. Tear it down and build a new country with us in charge. There's just no vaccine for America's sin. It's terminal. Every word at the convention, other than Biden's speech, was aimed directly at the left's base, the coalition of the miserable, that is the engine of the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, outside the convention, the base stayed busy. Thousands of Biden voters worked to help the Democratic ticket in the ways they know best, by hurting people and destroying things.
I just want to like point out here that, and I don't know, I might crop out this footage just for YouTube's sake, but because of the writing, but to say that like meanwhile outside the convention implies that this is going on literally outside the convention. Like there's the convention going on, everyone's having this story of how great things are, and then outside in the streets is mayhem and chaos. And yet, like in tiny lettering in the corner of the screen, it says this is back in May and June that the footage is. So to me, it seems very intended to be misleading to
it's like
the,
a little
the audience.
homage to 1968. That's what it's attempting to do.
Right, and they even mention this, like we'll point it out later, but the Summer of Love kind of like rhetoric.
I think some of that though comes to the reality that the people who are spending their time watching Fox News. I mean, I think one of the reasons why we're doing a video on YouTube about Fox News is that most people who are on YouTube looking at YouTube are not watching Fox News. So the demographic that is sitting home watching Tucker Carlson is probably 60 and above. So those metaphors probably ring true.
They took the most chaotic elements across different cities. You know, this isn't even just one place. It's like, how can we get the most distressing, stressful sounding and looking footage to pair with as a contrast to the speech that's going on? Because it's like that's not in the positivity of the convention itself.
Yeah, it's Tucker Carlson taking a page from that cop show that has replaced cops, Live PD, where they don't have to sign waivers because it's all live television from all over the country.
Oh, I didn't know about that. That's crazy.
And conveniently not showing the most heinous thing, which was the president clearing out peaceful protesters in front of the White House so he can walk across the fucking street and hold up a Bible.
Right.
None of that was hidden. Anyone who lives in an American city or can navigate a computer knew.
The right is so obsessed with the destruction of property. It's sick. It's so sick.
It's a sacred thing for them. That's like part of the specter, the boogeyman of like socialism is like, my castle might be under.
You mean that property is sacred to capitalists? Who would have thought?
What Nishay was saying a second ago, I mean, castle doctrine is, right there at the heart of like Second Amendment self-defense. You walk into my house, I can kill you.
Right.
And by extension, we're seeing people saying, if you're destroying somebody else's property, then apparently a private citizen can kill you, because like in many ways we're, it's almost like we're in like the Reformation, like post Civil War, where we're having like discussions over who is really a citizen and who has any political power in this situation. But yeah, ultimately, like, we see like the whole private property as being, some terrible like violation. And yet, in a world where everything is like everything is commodified, the destruction of private property as an act of protest, I mean, like, what else are you going to do? Tucker.
Exactly what was going on. But if you got your news exclusively from the Democratic message machine, you would have no idea. You'd have no clue that your country was being completely reshaped by violence in the streets. There was no mention of that at all from Democratic leaders at the convention this week. Antifa wasn't allowed to send delegates. Various speakers made BLM sound like a branch of the United Way. The media did not contradict this message. They simply refused to cover the violence outside.
Real quick, the contradiction that he like glosses over is Antifa was not allowed to send delegates, and yet apparently they're setting the agenda at a national level for the mainstream centrist Democrats.
Well, he's saying it has to be done like secretly, not like in the open. But he's clued in to the fact that this is going on. So, okay. But it's like the way that, just to get back to my point about how he's like signaling to the elderly that are watching this and like not able to see the screen that clearly and see the dates and everything, that this is implying this is going on. And then he's like, and I bet the mainstream media isn't showing this. So, the fact that the mainstream media is portraying the Democratic convention as if it went off well, it's just because they're hiding the fact that outside the doors of the convention is like fires and explosions. And he even says in a second, I think he adds that, I'll play the rest of the clip actually.
It was like it all never happened. It's possible that Joe Biden never found out about it. Biden doesn't get outside much. He knows only what they tell him. Judging from his...
So it's sort of implying that's like this was going on outside. And
yeah, that's
Biden...
actually an explosion right there. That's the flag going off.
Right, yeah. And it's like he has no idea. He might not even know. It's like because then it's like he's not hiding it. He may actually be oblivious to the fact that these explosions are going on behind him.
Clearly, Kamala is holding his hand to direct his attention.
Yeah, don't look over there. That's right.
Last night, Biden has come to believe that he is Mahatma Gandhi, leading a movement to restore love to the human heart.
A path of hope and light.
A path of hope and light. It sounds like a Beatles lyric from their acid phase.
Okay. First of all, like 1,000 points of light. I mean, that's pretty Reagan. But like, wow, Tucker Carlson dropping some LSD acid references, huh?
Well, it's weird to like, because it's sort of like we were saying before with 68, like signaling to the older folks about all of the chaos associated with that, civil unrest that thankfully was suppressed and, put away. But at the same time, there's why even bring that up there? And what was do one of you remember
he likes it and he likes it, because he kind of likes it, so he just wants to throw it out there a little bit. It's his really guilty pleasures that he loves the Grateful Dead.
He wrote isn't it on his Wikipedia page?
His last book, or his book from 2018, he named like Ship of Fools after the Grateful Dead. You can look on Fox News, about his. It's just it's stunning. He likes the Dead. He's been to 50 shows,
which is I have been to 5 Grateful Dead shows. That is an incredible devotion to that subculture, and I just don't buy it that Tucker Carlson, this buttoned up conservative.
Do you buy that Paul Ryan's favorite band is Rage Against the Machine?
I mean, I
think he likes the music. He doesn't listen to the lyrics.
He's a Dead fan. What I'm trying to say is that I don't think the man's sober. I think we should drug test Tucker Carlson. I don't know anybody who does the Grateful Dead show.
Yeah, to have never been dabbled in that kind of aspect of the culture is possibly, but far-fetched. At the same time, it relates back to your Lucy in the Sky analysis that exposure to these kinds of things does not guarantee any kind of enlightened worldview that, a lot of people associate them together of or in the sense of you can't be a lot of people in the community who are, in favor of maps and all this psychedelic psychotherapy that's coming back think that, oh, good, we can expose people to these types of experiences and then they're going to magically not be far right. And that's just not the case, as we've shown time and again.
No.
If we're being honest, who doesn't want hope and light? We all do. All decent people want that. And that's why it's a winning message in a national election. Unfortunately, it's also a deeply dishonest message. Unity is not what the Democrats are promising. The media understand that very well. They're committed Democrats themselves. Hope and light? Please. These are hardened partisans. They know perfectly
okay,
well.
Come on. like pot meet the kettle.
Right.
You're on Fox News, buddy.
I know.
Yeah, I don't get it. how many, look at the guys out there that you have, Limbaugh,
what
Michael
more
Savage.
hardened partisans do you have?
Joe Biden said on stage last night was absurd, but they also know that many Americans will believe it, so they love the speech.
Whoever wrote that speech needs to get a cookie and a hug and a flag and a puppy. That thing was crafted so well. This is the best night for Joe Biden ever.
The best.
Where's the Karl Rove clip from Fox News where Karl Rove said it was a really good speech?
Oh, was that in there? I must have.
No,
cut
I'm
it.
being sarcastic.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Karl Rove said it was a really good speech.
But the specific choice of that, the crafted message, it's implying again that they're excited at how well the illusion is being cast, like almost as if they're in the know that this is all just a ploy, of don't look over at the bombs, like, oh great, he was able to accomplish this lie, and that's what they're excited about. They're not actually excited about the message or about the performance in general, but about the success of the illusion that's been portrayed.
Yeah.
Joe Biden ever. Jennifer Granholm might be right about that. Unfortunately, in the short term, lies often work.
Oh my God.
It's so ironic though, because it's
here's the next liar.
Right. So this is transitioning over to Laura's show.
And that's what this election is going to come down to. It's going to be the swamp versus freedom in America. It's going to be socialism, as you've seen with the Bernie Sanders Joint Unity platform on Joe Biden's website. It's going to be socialism versus freedom versus the Constitution. All of those things that the Democrats don't believe so much in. Notice they didn't talk at all about the crime in Democrat-run cities, burning, looting, beating people in the streets.
This guy is not even worth acknowledging. He's such a shithead. He's not even worth acknowledging.
Excuse me. I will say though that Republicans very much like to discuss the Constitution. They like to talk about freedom and liberty. What you rarely hear them lionizing is democracy and democratic institutions.
Right.
And what's so great actually about Trump is that he has just he's so transparent that it's impossible for him to even dog whistle. And so, he's like, well, we can't do mail-in voting. That'll increase the voter turnout. And
he just says it. Yeah. Rather than
mask is
below
off.
Yeah.
These people really do hate democracy. And it's why it's been very easy for them to, slide much further right than anybody thought they could.
This is like a crime syndicate. The Trump family is a crime syndicate that their dad accidentally, for some publicity, became president of the United States, launched them out into everybody's, homes and TV screens across the country. And now, Trump Jr. is pissing his pants. New York Times just put a story out the other day. He's pissing his pants that they're going to lose. And then, all these cases against them are going to move forward. So
we'll see if they do, but
also, it's as Robert Reich and other people have pointed out, they're all for socialism for the rich. It's socialism versus the Constitution. It's such a fake, dichotomy that they're presenting.
Right. I mean, every single member of Congress who voted against government-sponsored healthcare is on a government-sponsored healthcare program for life.
Right. They just don't want to help out poor people. So.
The Democrats haven't even denounced that. It seems as though they're almost tacitly accepting of it, Laura. Yes, peaceful protesters don't burn down cars. They don't burn down housing projects. They don't loot Gucci stores to get a new handbag or purse or a belt. That's not peaceful protesting. And yet, between the DNC and their marketing wing, the mainstream media, I heard a lot about peaceful protesting. I believe someone called it the summer of love. Give me a break. I hope that good, God-fearing American people see through this nonsense, because that's the problem that we face. We are in an uphill battle in the sense that it is so biased, it is so flagrant. The media has just totally abdicated their responsibility to be arbiters of truth without bias, to be activists for the left. that regular people aren't consuming that sort of news.
So when I saw this, like my jaw dropped because I was like, how can you be so accurately describing what you are doing and acting outraged that like this other, group, the entire mainstream media, is doing the thing that you're actually doing for the right?
Sure. I mean, it was Joseph Goebbels stated that the strategy that they employed was to accuse their opponents of that which they were doing. And it's masterful what we're seeing and have seen for some time out of the Fox News network. But the RNC was quite a doozy of apocalyptic catastrophizing.
Sure. I mean, I think it was effective for, their strategy is simply the base at this point. It's just driving home the base. And what they want to do is get out the base voter. They want to get out the base. Instead of expanding, they're trying to energize base people who didn't vote in last election.
Yeah, so encouraging, activating more of that group rather than pulling in other groups.
Yeah, this type of messaging is not effective for
swing voters.
That slice of swing voters. It's not designed. Most people are already settled on it. There's like a couple percentage points that's up for grabs. That's it though.
Right.
Conservative, socially liberal isn't gonna fall for Trump Jr.'s stuff.
Yeah, let me just play the last 20 seconds.
I mean, Joe Biden, he's gonna get tough on China. I mean, it's laughable.
It's beyond laughable. The China question alone. Yeah.
He should be able to do an interview with someone like yourself or someone who's not going to spoon feed him questions that he already has the answer to, that he's miraculously reading off of a teleprompter. You'd think they would do that, but I don't think they will, and no one's going to push for it.
I mean, you mean exactly what it's like when Donald Trump Jr. appears on the Laura Ingraham show, like Ingram. I mean, I can't imagine a more softball pairing than these two.
Right. There's no pushback.
I can't. And well, you could have a little bit more softball would be Hannity, but
sure. Yeah, Hannity's on hiatus though right now, isn't he?
Did he get punished for I think it was Stelter's book where did you see that? Where basically he has quotes from Hannity people saying in private that Hannity thinks the guy's nuts, and why the hell do you think I'm vaping so much? I need to vape because the guy's this guy's driving me crazy.
Vape Nation.
So maybe that's why he's on break. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I misspoke, but I know that both him and Tucker actually were taking a break.
Well, Tucker takes a break every time his racist reality comes out.
He said it was a planned vacation, on the calendar.
That means that it's not a planned vacation when they say that. That's what that always means.
But it's just this is definitely 101. I was thinking of calling it Fash Tactics, but it is we're talking about why I bother going over this stuff when it's so on the surface. But at the same time, this happens to varying degrees all the time. But there's something useful about when it's such an extreme on the surface manipulative tactic, because it's we can talk about it and kind of assess the dynamics for when it does also happen in more subtle or harder to see ways.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say that this is clearly just a nice tiny little tasty bite slice of the right-wing echo chamber. So if you spend your time in your recliner watching Tucker Carlson, and then when good old Tuck is off or when the MyPillow guy is on, you tune in.
That was crazy.
These are you bounce around, and then oh, that's done. We go check out Hannity, and oh, what's Ann Coulter up to? And they all reference each other, and this is very much what we saw with the what we see.
I think Coulter's out of the club though now, isn't she?
Well,
I think she's out of the club. She's anti-Trump at this point.
Yeah, but she recently she has a new presidential choice. She said she wished that the 17-year-old shooter in Wisconsin was president. She said that on Twitter.
No.
Yeah.
How? Oh man, that's dark. That's super dark.
What do you want? It's cult. That's Coulter.
Yeah, it's like her whole shtick. Yeah. Anyhow.
Well, that was just a little snapshot of tactics for you. And like I mentioned, we're from +3 podcast of Psymposia. You can check us out, Psymposia.com. We have Patreon if you feel like chipping in. If you could like this, share it, whatever you feel like, we'd appreciate it. And hope to catch you again.